Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about one of the most badass characters in the ASOIAF universe, Ser Duncan the Tall. Duncan was a hedge knight, a knight who did not serve a lord, and he was known for his chivalry, his strength, and his kindness. He was also a close friend of the young Prince Aegon Targaryen, who would later become King Aegon V. Now, I know what you're thinking. Another knight? I've seen enough of those in Game of Thrones. But trust me, Duncan the Tall is not your average knight. He's a giant of a man, standing over 7 feet tall, and he's strong enough to crush a man's skull with his bare hands. But he's not just a brute. He's also a skilled swordsman, a cunning tactician, and a wise and compassionate man. Duncan the Tall is a true hero. He's always willing to fight for what he believes in, even when it means putting his own life on the line. He's also a loyal friend, a loving husband, and a devoted father. In short, Ser Duncan the Tall is a man to be admired. He's a role model for all of us, and he's a reminder that there is still good in the world. So without further ado, let's get started on our journey into the life and times of Ser Duncan the Tall. History and bibliography. History. Ser Duncan the Tall was born in Flea Bottom, a poor district of King's Landing. He never knew his parents, and he grew up as a street urchin. He was a big, strong boy, and he was often picked on by the other kids. But Duncan was also a kind and compassionate boy, and he always stood up for those who were weaker than him. One day, Duncan was caught stealing food from a merchant. The merchant was about to have Duncan arrested when he was stopped by a hedge knight named Ser Arlen of Pennytree. Ser Arlen took pity on Duncan, and he offered to take him on as his squire. Duncan was overjoyed. He had always dreamed of becoming a knight, and now he had the chance to learn from one of the best. Ser Arlen trained Duncan hard, and he soon became a skilled swordsman and juster. After several years of training, Ser Arlen decided to take Duncan on a quest. They traveled the 7 kingdoms, fighting in tournaments, helping the weak and the oppressed, and making many friends. One of Duncan's most famous adventures was when he traveled with the young Prince Aegon Targaryen. Aegon was known as Egg by his friends, and he and Duncan became close companions. They traveled together to the Wall, they fought in the Second Blackfyre Rebellion, and they visited many of the great castles of the 7 kingdoms. Bibliography. Ser Duncan the Tall is a major character in the ASOIAF universe. He is mentioned in many of the books, and he is the protagonist of 3 novellas, The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight. These novellas are set in the years before the events of the main ASOIAF series, and they provide a glimpse into the world of Westeros before the War of the 5 Kings. The Hedge Knight was published in 1998. The Sworn Sword was published in 2003. The Mystery Knight was published in 2010. All 3 novellas were written by George R.R. Martin. The novellas are available in print, ebook, and audiobook formats. They can be purchased from most major retailers. Powers and abilities. Physical abilities. Ser Duncan the Tall was a giant of a man. He stood over 7 feet tall and was incredibly strong. He was also a skilled swordsman and juster. In one story, Duncan the Tall was challenged to a duel by a knight named Ser Lucas Longinch. Ser Lucas was a skilled swordsman, but he was no match for Duncan's strength. Duncan easily defeated Ser Lucas and broke his sword in half. In another story, Duncan the Tall was fighting in a tournament when he was attacked by a group of bandits. The bandits were armed with swords and axes, but Duncan was able to defeat them all with his bare hands. Duncan the Tall's physical abilities made him a formidable opponent in battle. He was able to defeat much larger and stronger opponents, and he was always willing to fight for what he believed in. Mental abilities. Ser Duncan the Tall was also a very intelligent man. He was a quick learner, and he was always able to think on his feet. In one story, Duncan the Tall was captured by a group of bandits. The bandits were planning to kill him, but Duncan was able to escape by outsmarting them. In another story, Duncan the Tall was trying to solve a mystery. The mystery was very complex, but Duncan was able to solve it by using his intelligence and his quick wit. Duncan the Tall's mental abilities made him a valuable asset to his friends and allies. He was always able to come up with a plan, and he was always able to think of a way to outsmart his enemies. Personality. Ser Duncan the Tall was a very kind and compassionate man. He was always willing to help those in need, and he was always willing to fight for what he believed in. In one story, Duncan the Tall was traveling with a group of peasants when they were attacked by bandits. Duncan fought off the bandits and saved the peasants. In another story, Duncan the Tall was asked to judge a trial. The trial was very difficult, but Duncan was able to make a fair and just decision. Duncan the Tall's personality made him a beloved figure throughout the Seven Kingdoms. He was a true hero, and he was always willing to fight for what was right. Conclusion. So, there you have it. Ser Duncan the Tall. A giant of a man with a giant heart. A skilled warrior, a wise counselor, and a witty companion. He was always willing to fight for what he believed in, and he always put the needs of others before his own. Ser Duncan the Tall is a true hero, and he is a role model for all of us. He is a reminder that there is still good in the world, and that even the smallest person can make a difference. Now, I know what you're thinking. Another knight? I've seen enough of those in Game of Thrones. But trust me, Duncan the Tall is not your average knight. He's a giant of a man, standing over 7 feet tall, and he's strong enough to crush a man's skull with his bare hands. But he's not just a brute. He's also a skilled swordsman, a cunning tactician, and a wise and compassionate man. Duncan the Tall is a true hero. He's always willing to fight for what he believes in, even when it means putting his own life on the line. He's also a loyal friend, a loving husband, and a devoted father. In short, Ser Duncan the Tall is a man to be admired. He's a role model for all of us, and he's a reminder that there is still good in the world. So, if you're looking for a role model, look no further than Ser Duncan the Tall. He's a giant of a man with a giant heart, and he's an inspiration to us all.
If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.